The night was quiet, the kind of silence that settled deep into the bones. I had been lying in bed, half drifting between wakefulness and sleep, when a sudden knock at the door shattered the stillness. It was late, too late for visitors. My first thought was that something had happened to my friend. Why else would his sister show up at my doorstep unannounced? As I opened the door, there she stood, illuminated by the dim porch light. She was breathtaking. The kind of beauty that didn't just catch the eye but held it captive. Long dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, her lips slightly parted as if she had been running, her chest rising and falling with every breath. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but charged with something unspoken. "Can I come in?" I hesitated for a moment. This was unexpected. I had known her for years, had seen her at family gatherings, had shared casual conversations. But tonight, something was different. The air between us carried an unfamiliar weight, a tension neither of us acknowledged, but both seemed to understand. "Yeah, of course," I replied, stepping aside. She walked in, her perfume lingering in the space between us, subtle yet intoxicating. I closed the door, shutting out the world and whatever consequences lurked beyond this moment. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching as she wandered into the living room. She ran a hand through her hair, a nervous habit, and let out a small sigh. I needed to get out of the house. "Clear my head," she admitted. "I hope it's okay that I came here." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure what this was. She sat down on the couch, tucking her legs beneath her. The way she looked at me, curious, searching, sent a ripple of something dangerous through me. "You want a drink?" I offered, needing a distraction, something to keep my hands busy. She smiled, tilting her head.
"Sure."
"Whatever you're having." I walked to the kitchen, gripping the counter for a brief second before pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. This was just a normal conversation, a casual visit. That's all. But when I returned, handing her the glass, our fingers brushed. A fleeting touch, barely noticeable, yet it sent a jolt through me. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held my gaze, the moment stretching between us, unspoken words pressing against the silence. I sat down beside her, closer than I should have. The distance between us had shrunk in every way. Her presence, her scent, the warmth radiating from her body, it all felt inevitable. "So," she murmured, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. "What do you do when you can't sleep?" I swallowed hard, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. "Depends," I said, my voice lower than I intended. "Sometimes, I just see where the night takes me." Her lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. "Then let's see where it takes us." The air between us thickened, charged with something neither of us was ready to name, but both unwilling to ignore. She took a slow sip of her drink, her gaze locked onto mine over the rim of the glass. There was a challenge in her eyes, a silent question I wasn't sure I had the strength to refuse. I leaned back, exhaling deeply, but even as I tried to create space, the tension only grew. "So," I said, my voice carefully measured, "what's really on your mind?" She set her glass down on the coffee table, fingers lingering on the rim before looking up at me. "Do I need a reason to be here?" I could have told her yes. I could have reminded her that she was my friend's sister, that there were unspoken boundaries between us. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. Not when she was sitting this close, her knee grazing mine, her eyes holding secrets I suddenly wanted to uncover. "You should," I said, though the words lacked conviction. A slow, knowing smile played at her lips. "Maybe I just wanted to see you." Something inside me unraveled. Maybe it was the way she said it, casual yet intimate, like a confession wrapped in temptation. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, as if she already knew what was about to happen. I reached for my drink, but before I could take a sip, she placed her hand over mine. A simple touch, light and deliberate. I froze. "I see the way you look at me," she murmured, her fingers tracing a slow, deliberate path along the back of my hand. I swallowed hard. "And how's that?" "Like you're trying not to." She was right. I had spent years pretending that I didn't notice the way she moved, the way her presence shifted the energy in any room she walked into. But here, in the quiet of my home, with no one watching, there was no need to pretend anymore. I turned my hand over, catching her fingers between mine. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned in closer, her breath warm against my skin. My heart pounded, an erratic rhythm that echoed in my ears. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. "Probably." Her voice was barely audible, her lips just inches from mine.
I could have stopped it then.
I could have stepped away, drawn the line that should have never been crossed. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the distance, pressing my lips against hers in a kiss that was both hesitant and hungry. She sighed against my mouth, her hands sliding up my arms, gripping my shoulders as if grounding herself. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this: heat, urgency, a reckless need that neither of us had the will to fight. And just like that, the night took us somewhere neither of us could turn back from. Her breath was warm against my skin, her fingers threading through my hair as our bodies pressed together. The taste of whiskey lingered on her lips, mixing with something sweeter, something intoxicating that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I knew this was wrong. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stop, to step back before we crossed a line that couldn't be erased. But the weight of her against me, the way her body molded into mine, made reason feel distant, irrelevant. She sighed as my hands traced the curve of her back, pulling her closer, anchoring her to me as if letting go was no longer an option. I felt her heart racing beneath my touch, a frantic rhythm that matched my own. "We shouldn't," she murmured, though she made no move to leave. I swallowed, my forehead resting against hers. "Then tell me to stop." Silence. She didn't say the words. Instead, her lips parted, her fingers tightening around the fabric of my shirt as if she needed something to hold on to. And that was all the answer I needed. The space between us disappeared. I kissed her deeply, hungrily, as if making up for all the times I had pretended not to want this. Her body pressed into mine, soft and warm, each touch, each sigh, unraveling the last threads of restraint I had left. Somewhere between stolen kisses and tangled sheets, guilt flickered at the edges of my mind. But she pulled me back in with every whisper, every lingering touch, until nothing else mattered except the moment we were lost in. Time became irrelevant. The night stretched on, each second a slow, burning descent into something we could never take back. Every glance, every movement, every breath between us was unspoken confirmation that we had already fallen too deep. She traced patterns along my skin, her touch featherlight yet searing. "You feel so far away," she murmured. I turned onto my side, cupping her face, my thumb brushing against her cheek. "I'm right here." Her gaze searched mine, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. Doubt? Fear? Or maybe the same realization creeping into my own mind. There would be no undoing this. No going back to pretending we were nothing more than what the world saw us as. And yet, as I pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine, I knew I didn't regret it. Not yet. But the night wasn't endless. And sooner or later, reality would come crashing in. For now, though, I let myself believe in the illusion that this moment could last forever. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. I blinked against the brightness, the haze of sleep still clinging to me. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then I felt her. She lay beside me, her bare skin warm against mine, her breathing slow and steady. Strands of her hair were splayed across the pillow, and in the quiet, the weight of reality pressed down on me. Last night hadn't been a dream. It had been real, too real. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. My mind raced with everything this meant, everything I had allowed to happen. I had let go of every boundary, every rule, and now there was no taking it back. Beside me, she stirred, her body shifting beneath the sheets. A soft sigh escaped her lips before her eyes fluttered open. For a second, she just looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, small, hesitant, as if testing the weight of the moment. "Morning," she whispered. I swallowed, nodding. "Morning." She stretched, her fingers grazing my arm before she slowly pulled away, sitting up. The sheet slid down her back, revealing bare skin kissed by the golden morning light. I forced myself to look away, my thoughts tangled between what had happened and what came next. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice quieter now. I hesitated. What was I thinking? That I had made a mistake? That I had crossed a line I could never uncross? That I wanted to reach for her again despite knowing I shouldn't? Instead, I said that this changes everything. She held my gaze for a long moment before nodding, as if she had already known the answer. "Yeah," she murmured, pulling the sheet around herself. "It does." A thick silence settled between us. The spell of the night had broken, replaced by something heavier, something neither of us could escape. I sat up, raking a hand through my hair. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a sharp reminder that life outside this room hadn't paused just because we had. I reached for it, my chest tightening when I saw the name on the screen. It was my girlfriend. Guilt clawed its way up my throat. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't answer. I couldn't.
Not yet.
She watched me, her expression unreadable. "You should go," she said finally, her voice softer than I expected. I looked at her, searching for something, regret, sadness, anything to tell me she felt what I did. But she just offered a small, almost knowing smile. I stood, gathering my clothes in silence. At the door, I hesitated, glancing back at her one last time. "This doesn't have to be the end," I said, though even I wasn't sure what I meant. She met my gaze, her eyes unreadable. Maybe not. And just like that, I walked away, carrying the weight of a night I could never take back.